Hello? Yeah. Hi. So I missed out on last night's vlog because I was thinking about different things and I actually filmed some stuff, but I didn't end up uploading it and kind of just eventually fell asleep. It's well bright. Is this better? Yes. So today I was thinking in the shower this morning about the fact that there might be some rhyme and reason to why most mature but non-industrialized cultures place such value on elders. Um, while our current configuration, which is a relatively new cultural paradigm, and constantly renovating, constantly updating, constantly upgrading to version 2.0, 2.1, all these things, constantly. So we don't ever get to the point where we're mature and confident in our configuration because things change so fast. So in our new society, we also happen to have an obsession with youth, which means that we tend to showcase people at the most conflicted times in their lives, which is the first time they're independent prior to getting the hang of it, prior to figuring themselves out, prior to finding out what their values are, prior to finding out what their motivations are, prior to finding out what real happiness can feel like, prior to experiencing real love. So you have these people who drive our media a lot because a lot of our things that we consume, music, if you look at music, a lot of artists are so young. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with being young, but I'm just saying that if it there's something wrong with too much of an extreme. It would be fine if there was variety, but there isn't. It's a lot of an extreme. It's a lot of very young people coming out of their teens who are made into a pop star. Then you have 10 years with the brand, you know. So Rihanna starting her teens, and then they have all this time with that brand. She's still youthful, she's still beautiful, she's not aging in front of you. So you have a long shelf life with an artist like that compared to other artists who, they're gonna mature faster, they're gonna start having kids, it's gonna mess up the tour schedule, all these things. They're less valuable as an investment in an artist, I guess. But you also have the same thing with actors. A lot of stories, a lot of movies revolving around teenage years and young adulthood. Very few stories about mature lives because that's boring, because it's less conflicted. So the paradox being that the most conflicted time in your life is the most entertaining to watch, but it is the least educational, I think, in terms of imparting wisdom and encouragement to the public. And so a lot of our art, because it revolves around so much conflict and because we are in a secular capitalist organization that hasn't yet figured out how to deal with the spiritual needs of people, aside from materialism, we are still spreading an idea that is really from like the 1800s, 1900s, which is that to espouse scientism, I don't know, scientism, not scientifism. To espouse scientism, which is to say, to view the world as capable of producing objective truths, to view the world as capable of being analyzed and studied and empiricized and cataloged, to view the world that way, one must eventually deny the existence of higher organizational structures in the form of a God head of society of humanity. Denying a Godhead means that you then deny intentional creation and instead accept random evolutionary patterns because that is the scientifically proven origin of our species. So we must take out intention. And I don't believe in intelligent design or any of that shit. But lately I have opened myself to the possibility of the fact that we could very easily, because I mean, okay, look at a human, right? It's very simple. Look at a human. In the human body, we have so much bacteria. What we see as our body is so much space on an atomic level, on a molecular level. There's so much space in between, and I touch this, I think it's firm just because it's pushing back a certain force. But on a fundamental level, there's a lot of water here, there's a lot of space here, and water and space never yet made me have a conversation. And yet somehow I am me, despite being comprised of so many smaller elements, and a lot of microorganisms, even in my eye, even on my face, even on my tongue. So many microorganisms, and there's so many microorganisms in the soil that help bring a plant to life. There's so many microorganisms in the stomach, and they might even throw off your mental chemistry. Your brain chemistry might be affected by the gut bacteria you have. So all of this to say that small things actually help and collaborate in the making of a bigger, more complex thing. And evolution already shows that. Science and biology shows that. So why would science then, and not to say that science does this, but a lot of scientific minded people in media push this message as the final conclusion, which is a false conclusion, which is that everything in existence could very easily be the components and the gut bacteria and the microorganisms of a larger consciousness. There's nothing excluding that possibility. And even though something is improbable, which this isn't really improbable, this is like just a logical continuation of the slippery slope I just described, where, small things are in big things and big things can be smart. We as humans are smart. There might be a brilliant, genius God figure that we are just living in and setting up our houses in. And these houses is like a snail shell to it. This complicated brick house that I'm living in is just like some foolishness, some snail shell or some like little pattern in the sand drawn by a fish underwater. It's just contextualizing it in terms of levels of complexity would comprise accepting the view that we might not be the end all be all of sentience. Just because we only see ourselves, we might be in the loneliest corner of the universe. We might just be in the loneliest corner of the universe, but somewhere else there's a party with sentient beings just like zipping across, visiting one another, and we just happen to be in a very, very lonely corner of the universe. Or it could be that sentient life is very rare. But all the same, no matter what, it still doesn't exclude meaning and purpose from life. And I know I've gotten off on this very big tangent on God when I started talking about youth. And the reason that this connects is because in young adulthood, one does not have a big spiritual investment. Not necessarily. Like you might, but more often than not you don't, compared to older people who you see them start getting to spirituality and you say, oh, them start go back to church. But she never used to go to church. But then, that person might have taken ill and then they start go to church and you're like, but so because you see a mortality, you start get spiritual. That seems hypocritical. It's not. It's really not. It's a matter of saying, you know what, it's time to think about this thing. Think about it complexly. And what is possible? What is probable? What makes sense to me? What gives me value? What gives me direction? What gives me solace? What gives me ritual? That's what somebody comes to when they decide to be religious. And I'm not religious. Since I was 13, I was working my way out of church. Even though when I was very young, I was very much into church because, I did what I was told. But yeah, youth culture and scientism combined in our era has created a media message that is on the edge of nihilism, on the edge of existential absurdism, where it's just like, oh, nothing matters and we're all alone and, everybody will disappoint you, and everybody is a little bit bad, and let's have an anti-hero for this, and let's treat people badly, and let's bad talk small-mindedness, and let's bad talk people who are different from us, and disdain people who don't have intelligence. Like, a lot of things are coming from a negative energy when I watch these shows, when I consume this media. It's a lot of negative energy. And I think people don't realize their biases because, like, for example, unfortunately, I'm exposed to a lot of American media. I don't necessarily need to be paying attention to American shit because I don't live in America. So why am I learning all this stuff? But I do pay attention, and this is what I'm criticizing so much. It's because, so a lot of people I follow are leaning more liberal. And yet, like, I listened to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about how the right, when you talk to a person who's a conservative, it sounds like they're just spewing sound bites. Like, they sound prepped, they sound prepared because the stuff that they watch and consume has all the same information. And the thing is that even though liberal media is still more disseminated, it's still quite uniform for disseminated form. Because, I mean, liberal media, your sources come from a million different places. You have different authors on Medium, you have Huffington Post with a bunch of different authors, you have a bunch of different websites, you have a bunch of different YouTube channels, everybody. And then you have, your traditional media figureheads, Colbert and Trevor Noah and all these good people as well. But in the middle of all of that, they're all using the same vocabulary. If you talk about, gay marriage, and you're going to hear heteronormative, you're going to hear all this academia. So, I mean, I think what it is that conservatives have their own academia, which is the form of Fox News and all these things, because they don't have the university backhand. Backhand? What's the word? There's something with a word. There's a word with a word hand in there. Offhand, they don't have it. They don't know it like the palm of their hand. It's not, no. Offhand. Offhand? Anyways, they don't know it off book. Yeah, they don't know it off book like that. But they emulate it by, having their own form of folk education, which is fine. They draw conclusions that might be exclusionary, because I think the only difference between a conservative and a liberal is who they think of as society. That's literally it. That's literally it. A conservative thinks that you don't need this much money to run the government because you only need to take care of these people. That's kind of a conservative outlook, which is that you only need to take care of businesses because businesses will give everybody else jobs. You only need to take care of citizens because citizens are the ones who need to be taken care of. And anybody who's not a citizen should get out. So, these kind of views. Whereas liberal people say, like, any human anywhere suffering have a backlash on other people. Society works in that social ills affect everybody else. It's really a functionalist outlook. When you think about it, the liberal view is a functionalist outlook where it's like, okay, or it could be a fear of Marxist interpretations of society, one or the other, or something else. It doesn't have to be what I designated as, but yeah, it can be a thing where, like, liberal mindsets have to do with a fear of Marxist outcomes, and so you have to correct society before it gets to a conflict. So, I mean, those are the differences in outlooks, but I mean, everybody still wants the best for their family and whatever. How did I even get here? My topic was oh my god, I'm not sure I'll upload this because I'm not sure I'm doing it right. But yeah, my topic was the fact that you have so much youth culture represented and mingled with scientism. And I think youth gets the platform because elders, once upon a time, were supposed to be moral leaders, but of course we have had so many failings given in the history that we're able to study. We've seen that nobody really knows what they're doing. But I think there's a certain peace that you observe in your elders. And I'm thinking about my grandmother, for example, and all these people. There's a certain peace you observe in elders at times where, at the very least, if they haven't, dealt with all of their inner issues, they've at least found certain things. They've found out certain ways. They've learned how to live with a human being for an extended amount of time. That's knowledge, like, regardless. That's knowledge. If they have achieved their goal and become successful in their career, that's knowledge. If they have created something really amazing and have a legacy that people admire, that's knowledge. If they are spiritually found some kind of enlightenment and seem to be more at peace with the world and more content on a day-to-day level, that's knowledge. And elders, you can't help but acquire knowledge. So literally just the act of aging is in of itself valuable. And we devalue it these days, I think, because it's like a teenage rebellion in society happening right now, where in that we say, well, you did this and you did that and you were never there for me for that and da-da-da. Basically looking at history to say that people have fucked up. People have done Holocaust. People have done all this shit. Genocide everywhere. People have fucked up. So nobody knows anything and you can't tell me nothing. I think that's the wrong conclusion to draw. I think that's a nihilistic outlook where it's like nothing means anything, nobody knows anything, we're all gonna die. And it's like, that's one way to see it. I think it's the less fun way to see it, and I think it's a more destructive message to send out into the media. And on some level, that is what is happening. And I think it pervades society, it permeates society, and I think it breaks down certain social structures that we probably want to keep around. We probably want to keep it just a little bit for mental health, I'm sorry, I sound so disgusting because I have a cold and I'm like sinuses doing things and whatever, so I apologize. But yeah, when it comes to what elders provide and their stories and having a link and a connection to them, is that we can see that the journey has fulfillment in store, some kind of fulfillment. But instead, okay, here we're getting to the crux of it, right? 17 minutes in, I'm so sorry. Here we see that when you only tell one story, which is the story of a young person, whether a teenager or a young adult, and whatever obstacle them face, whether real or fantasy based, whatever it is, if that is a story you tell continuously through music, through art, through film, through television, through the news, if you focus on youth as much as you do, more than one would in real life, because in real life you come across a bunch of different people. If you live in a pre-industrial community, especially, because we have to talk about things that humans were evolutionarily inclined to be good at, and community is something that is important to us because we're the most social animals. We're like incredibly social. Aside from ants, I can't think of a more social animal than humans, right? So we are social creatures. So what are the longest time that the most natural habitat for our social life is the one that we need to usually look back on, and that's usually pre-industrial organization. Pre-industrial organization has a lot of extended family involvement, has a lot of close-knit communities, usually live around the same people. We are usually capable of only remembering and considering real and family or friend 100 people. That's the maximum our brain can usually handle before people start just becoming anonymous words. Yeah, before people become anonymous, 100, that's the limit that we can handle. So if we're talking about this kind of society, in that society, you would come across your elders on a regular basis. And they would start offering advice, and yes, you'd be like, yeah, man, yeah, man, yeah, man. Old man, okay, I get it. Cool, yeah, yeah, yeah. But you would still have heard the thing, and you would have still have received that information, and then you can compare it to what your friend says, and you can compare it to what your parents says, and you can compare it to what the old man said, and you get all these different perspectives and all these different sources of knowledge. And yes, that is it. Whereas we relegate the value of age with the value of accrued knowledge that conforms to scientism. Meaning, if it's not empirical and measurable, don't share it. If it is not a person who is teaching you, don't value it. If it's not a person who's in an accredited academic institution, that's what I mean. So if it's not a teacher at your primary, if it's not a lecturer at your university, then, might be an entrepreneur who's sharing his success story, and all these people writing self-help books and all these things. Like, that's a way for us to do it. But it's all in the vein of marketing. It's, except for education, which is the temple of scientism. Let's put that right. Education is the temple of the scientist. Ideology. I was gonna put religion, but it's not. That's not. But ideology, belief system. And in that case, education is revered, but only as a tool to impose ideology. It's not the same as wisdom. It's knowledge. It's not wisdom. And what I'm talking about is wisdom. So wisdom would involve achieving one's dreams, knowing what dreams are worthy of pursuit, how to live with our fellow people, our fellow man, our fellow woman, how to accept people who are different from us, and how to resolve conflict. These things are a matter of wisdom, and you can study psychology, and you can publish a study and say that based on this and this, we think this and this. But it's not the same as your grandma sitting you down and talking to you and saying, when I was younger, I used to have this and that, and then I did this and this, and this is how I am now. And you can then decide, based on your values, make a valid judgment and say, I want to do that because I admire where she is now, I respect where she is now. Or you can say, I don't want to be like her, so I don't want to do that. And with our okay, so yeah, I disperse my points a lot, but I kind of try to stitch them back together. So now, going back to the fact that I talk about pre-industrial society, community life, extended family is there, friends of friends is there, everybody you see on a regular basis throughout your day, which seems impossible for us now. Like, now you spend a lot of your time with your work colleagues who are people you didn't choose them, just like you don't choose your family. But at the same time, they are very disposable because they can get fired, you can get fired, you can move, they can move. All these things happen constantly. Like, so many people I know move on a regular that I don't, I don't know anybody who's staying still. So you have this different configuration in these days where you don't have contact with your extended family. You don't have contact with your grandparents. You visit them once a year around the holidays. That's how that goes. You don't have the same kind of social structures that would force this kind of contact. You can choose who you want to be in contact with all the time, constantly, including social media. You can just close down who you want to be in contact with, or you can open up. So the imparting of positive messages to say, hey, I know you're at this stage, but guess what? It gets better there. Or this is what I did to get to this stage. Like, there's no means of being in touch with these people. Aside from happenstance, you can't purposefully craft it like that. There's no real reason, because our society is very segregated, very age segregated. You have to be, you're usually around your peers at all points, and it's literally organized that way, that you're around your peers. And so we're not exposed to the wisdom of elders as much as we should be. And so we then are stuck in a youth centric mindset wherein, yes, as a young person, everything is possible. But there's a value to be found in listening to someone who has lived a certain path, and you get to hear about that path and find out how they got there and find out what the human body is capable of. And that's valuable because it gives you hope in a very humanistic way, in a way that doesn't have to compromise your beliefs. And we don't have that. We have mostly media messages pushing out the struggle of youth. And the problem with that is that it helps amplify your personal dissatisfaction, because it's like, well, either the protagonist in the thing that you're consuming has figured it out and has made it. So a musician who is, 21 has made it, and then suddenly you start saying, holy shit, I ain't done shit in my life because she's already famous and a billionaire at this time, and I'm 22, that can be it. Or you watch a film and they resolve the conflict by, by getting the thing, getting the thing, as if just getting something is your value. And it's a higher form of materialism. So falling in love is usually resolution. Getting a job, getting your dream career is usually a solution. That's usually the denouement of a film, of a story, of a book. Any conflict that has been building up for your youthful protagonist is usually solved by, they leave and go live the place they always wanted to live. They fall in love. They get their dream career. Their dreams come true career-wise. Or, what else is there? They create something, or they become an entrepreneur, or whatever it is. But then what it does, all of these messages that come out of these films that we consume, or these TV shows that we consume, where, Ted becomes the architect, or Ted gets the girl, or, whatever. That's just How I Met Your Mother as an example, because it was very popular. When we have this value judgment placed on it, then until you are that, you are worthless. No, isn't it? Because being young has so many obstacles, and you're not hearing stories of people who persevere and reach the other side. You're hearing stories of people who are as young as you and they have it figured out. That's kind of what you're hearing. You hear stories of people who are your age and, them just talented and bright, and they get there. You don't see the disgusting amount of hard work. You don't see the disgusting amount of despair. You don't see the horrible amount of, moments of where you lack motivation because your self-worth is tied up in what you are able to produce for society, because that's what we're taught. Our self-worth is really not inherent in this system. We are supposed to prove our worth on a constant basis, otherwise you won't eat next month. If you haven't proved your worth this month, you don't eat next month. That is what our society tells us every single day. And our media amplifies that by saying, even the zenith of your life, is still going to be a kind of material gain, because you've gained a partner, you've gained a family, had a child, you've gained a job, you've gained a legacy. These are the things worthy of pursuit. You've gained a reputation in your community. We quantize it. We quantize these things. And then we add a dollar value to each action required to get to that point. So if you have a child and you want your child to be successful, well, there's dollar signs everywhere on how to do that. Send them to a good private school when they're young. Send them to a good university. There's dollar signs everywhere. So everything is quantified. So you have to continue proving your worth to society in order for society to help you achieve your dreams and your goals. And this is a part of the youthful nihilism, I think, because I was talking the other day about sacredness, and that most major religions, I think they become major because they impart sacredness to a human being regardless of actions. That you are sacred on some level and you need to maintain that sanctity by your actions. Whereas in capitalism, secular scientist capitalism, these ideologies govern most major industrial societies today. And in this configuration, you are without value to society unless you are able to contribute and produce in some way or form. And we see this in the fact that we have examples of the people who do not produce every day out on the road. And it's a sort of functionalist. Oh my gosh, I just like snorted. Oh my gosh. I should stop drawing attention to it. Maybe you're not hearing it and I'm just like drawing attention to it. Self-consciousness. I can't help it, happens sometimes. But yeah, you see it on the road. You see the guy without a home. And you're like, oh, that's the consequence of me not living up to the obligation of society. And I will only become sacred and sanctified if I achieve, some kind of big business, get the big house, or if I do some big tour as a musician and get the big car and mansion or whatever, or if I discover something huge and get the Nobel Prize, or if I write something really great and get the Man Booker Prize, or if I create a great film and get an Oscar Prize. Like, we have our halls of hallowed people. We create walks of fame for our hallowed saints. We create award seasons for our hallowed saints of industry, technology, entrepreneurship, acting, etc., film, all these things. And those are the winners. Those are the sacred. Those are the ones who have gotten sanctity from the society. And the rest of us need to earn it. And what an elder would have told a person who is young and gullible on a certain level in terms of imbibing and accepting this message, or else refusing it and saying, well, no, nothing matters, and going into a nihilistic spiral. What an elder might say would be something to balance that, to say, well, actually, I've lived long enough and here's what I found. I got the guy. I got the marriage. But then I found out that I had never resolved my issues with loving myself. So I did not accept his love. And because I felt like his love was so much more than I deserved, I pushed him away. And that's a lesson you can listen to, because like a person might not say it as plain as that, but then you listen to their story to say that they did achieve this thing that is sacred, but because of this and this, it went this way, or because of this and this, it went the other way. You can learn from that, and we're just not telling those stories to each other because we are obsessed with youth, and youth is the conflict stage. And not to say that being elderly isn't conflicted. Of course it is. Everything is conflict in life. But I think you inevitably must learn how to handle it better, or how to cope better for yourself. And that might not mean that you don't encounter conflict. It just means that you have come to understand what you are most comfortable with doing in the midst of conflict. Because as young people, we might be impressionable. We might just like be in the middle of conflict and say, all right, I'll go with the flow because I don't want to get into a fight. Whereas an older person might have the strength of character to say, like, you know what, no, this is what I believe in and I'm not going to do that. Maybe. We don't know. I don't know. Because I'm not hearing enough stories of older people. It's always like, Matt is an entrepreneur at 26 and he has done this and he made this and that and that. Or, you might see people in their 30s, but honestly, unless somebody has done something real amazing, we don't see them after them turn 40. They come out of the public sphere. They come out of public life. They don't exist. And we send our old people away to homes and we never hear from them either. And you visit your grandparents once or twice a year for holidays. Like, not to say that people who are older are just automatically smarter, but I'm saying it is a source of information about the human journey and what time does to a soul that we just don't know about because we don't probe it enough, because we are obsessed with youth as though youth has some answer that it doesn't, because youth is possibility. It's endless possibility. That's why it's so interesting, because it's endless possibility. Anything can happen with a young person. Them story open. But if you ever write a story about an older person, you have to have already created a whole backstory. And backstory is not interesting. Backstory is not interesting because you have to say that, oh, he's a lawyer and he's a this and that. With a young person, you just say that this is Ed. This is Ed. This is Ed. Let's follow Ed's story. And say, oh, look, Ed just got a job at a blah, 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 and he started to do a da, 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 and he wanted to find a blah, blah, blah. And he has all this open possibility. It's a great thing to write. Just like how, because I've written, and I've read a lot in the past, and a lot of tropes are just for ease of use because they're handy, But I think people get lazy about tropes, because if you're writing a story about a child, the child's an orphan. Why? Because orphans get away with more. You can have the child run away to a magic school and come back home bruised with bones regrown in his arm, and nobody's not going to ask any questions because nobody cares about the orphan boy. It's easier to get away with a lot of adventurous stuff if your child doesn't have parents constantly nitpicking and helicoptering. So most children's books, they have neglectful parents or they're orphans because it's just easier to have a better set of possibility. But I think what it does is that it normalizes pain as an important factor for forward momentum. So then artists get this twisted idea that you have to be tortured and unhappy in order to tell a good story or create good art. And I find that really annoying, because I used to reject, spiritualism. I used to like scoff at it and laugh at it. But the thing is that if that is where my life is going, and it makes me more happy to think of the world in a more spiritually open way, and I would have scoffed at myself, like literally even last year I would have scoffed at myself. But if it gives me more chance at happiness, my happiness is more important than my art. Because I know that I am valuable in and of myself, whether I create or not. But when you have a focus on this kind of mindset that I've been describing, where it's, youth-centric, science-centric, secular, capitalist-centric, your value, if you're not creating, you have no value. If you're not in a relationship, you have no value because you haven't achieved it. If you're not in your dream career, you have no value. So you have all these valueless young people who haven't achieved their value or their sacredness as yet, who already have to deal with the stresses of trying to survive. On top of it, have been imposed with this idea of their worthlessness to society unless they start doing something. You walk around with an existential crisis on your hands because you don't know your value, because you think you might be valueless, which makes it easy to then exit the game. Just say, and that shouldn't be the kind of culture that we celebrate. I don't think a culture that facilitates one not seeing the value in themselves because they haven't yet contributed, because they're young. You're young. You don't even know what you have to offer as yet because you're still learning what there is to offer. You're still learning about the world. And I think when we tell all these stories about young people, we forget that a lot of the cool things don't really happen when you're young. When you're young, you're supposed to figure out what the cool things are. That's like the main thing. Like you learn, you go to school, you get an education, you find out about the world, you learn about the world. That's all you need to do. You need to learn about the world. And then you can start contributing when you are sure that you have found a thing that you know you will be able to produce healthily and joyfully in that area. Because joyful creation gives something to the world that miserable creation does not, which is that it shows it wants to connect more eagerly. It wants to connect more genuinely. Because if you have discovered something and you really like it and it makes you feel so happy, and you know somebody who's sad, you wanna, on some level, you wanna bring it to them and say, hey, look at this thing. I found this thing and it made me feel really good. And I think it could make you feel really good too. So I don't know if this interests you, but look at this. That's how I feel when I write music. Like when I am feeling really shit and then I write a new song and it makes me feel so happy, I'm just like, I want to share this thing because I think it might help somebody else, because I can't be the only one who felt like this, who now feels like this. So maybe this will help somebody else. Like I really want to do that. That's what I do when I share. And the same thing can happen with knowledge. Like, if you're a scientist, it can happen with business. If you're a business person, if you're saying that I created this thing and I think creating it might be good for you too, because you'll be able to provide value for your society and your group and your family and whatever, all these things. But even though we're still talking about creation and production, which are the crux of our social organization and capitalist organization, the sacredness is not in the product itself, in the act of creation itself, because a materialistic society might put sacredness on material production. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the act of knowing oneself and then putting oneself out into the world via some medium. That act, that is the sacredness. And the sacredness means that you already did the hard work of learning yourself in relation to the world. You learn about the world, you learn about yourself, and then you contribute to it based on what you have found to be true of the world. And I think it's healthier because it is you're feeling a more uniform purpose that will fit into the bigger tapestry of what we're trying to do as a human family. The bigger tapestry being, our advancement, our development, our increased survival, but also I think pretty much everybody on this planet is a calculator on some level, calculating what is the life well lived. Each person wants for themselves the best life possible. And if they don't think it's attainable, then they might, they might opt out. They might say, no thanks, and opt out. But I think fundamentally, on every level, every human being is trying to pursue the best life lived for themselves. And so in a way, we are all calculating that answer. Just like Google in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy would predict that we're a machine, we're a good calculator. I think we are a good calculator for the ultimate meaning of life, because everybody's pursuing the answer on some level in their day-to-day life, and somebody must eventually get it right. Matter of probability. So Whoa, that was such a long ramble. It's been 43 minutes. I don't know. I don't know. Have I made any sense? Have I said anything interesting? I don't think I'm gonna cut this up or try to edit it because I don't think it makes any sense. But yeah, let's have a conclusion. Yeah, we're gonna conclude. Conclusion being, oh gosh, I need some water first. I'm all talked out. I'm so thirsty. What the heck? Where's my water? Excuse me, sir. Where's my water? Anyways, yeah, all that to say that yeah, this obsession with telling the story of the young protagonist means that we're not seeing stories from varied point of views, and because television and media have come to replace so many aspects of social life that we no longer partake in because people are so busy working in their, segregated circles. Everybody is separated most of the day from their family, separated most of the day from their friends. So because we're doing these really forced apart things, then we socialize through the internet, through social media, and we also escape into media and fiction a lot and art a lot when we don't have our family right there in front of us. And in so doing, we have to be careful of who it is that is sending us messages, because inevitably what you consume is what you consume. We think that we can take something in and it doesn't affect us, but you are consuming something. What you consume is what you consume. Like, it's a tautology. You're consuming it. So don't think that you're just untouched by it. It's not possible because you have consumed it. It's like saying, oh, I eat apple pie, but I don't take on the calories. Like, bitch, how can you say that? You have consumed it. When you consume something, you consume it. Tautology. So if you are spending your days watching a certain TV show and it does a thing to you, or you consume a certain kind of music that's always talking about, resentment and anger and really dark, heavy things. I mean, I love that shit. I used to love that shit. But I don't fully consume it anymore because it doesn't resonate with me spiritually these days, and it puts me in a different mind space that I don't really necessarily want to be in. And so I think the preponderance, I think that's the issue. The main issue, it's not that it exists. Of course it can exist, it can do whatever it wants. But I think the fact that there is a bias skew towards what people think to be true of the world. So when you always see an anti-hero, it's like, oh, the gritty reality behind this TV show is really cool. It's so realistic because, there's an anti-hero and, people are bad and whatever. People make bad decisions. Yeah, people make bad decisions. But you know what? There are some really friendly, happy people as well. And they exist. So I'm always glad for a show like New Girl, for example, as much I would be happy for a show like Game of Thrones. Yes, people can be duplicitous and evil. But you know what? There's plenty of really just like bubbly, simple people. Bubbly, happy, friendly people. And you never see them. And so then in your head you start thinking, oh, everybody's going to let you down. Everybody's kind of got bad things. But yeah, everybody's going to let you down because anything is possible. Literally, every single day we live, anything is possible. I could go and punch someone right now. I don't. Every single person out here could go out and punch people right now. And they don't. And then sometimes they do. Because everything is possible and we still only choose a few actions every day to go through. I think that we have to give ourselves more credit as humans. And I think the media skews our perception of what we are capable of because of this obsession with youth, because of this obsession with if it's not scientific, it doesn't matter. So emotional well-being, spiritual well-being, while we can discuss them on a surface level, we can only discuss them to the extent that science has figured it out. And I would not say that we have to go against that. I would say that we have to go more into anecdotal evidence. We have to take more anecdotal approaches, because until we have the science to figure out mental health properly, until we have the science to figure out well-being and contentment in our everyday lives properly, we have to take the anecdotal evidence to see what we can do. We can't just like leave it as a blank space. And I think the scientific, nihilistic, capitalistic arrangement that we inhabit, most of us these days, it leaves it as a blank space and says, boy, you're gonna have to just figure that out. If you can't be happy with material stuff, which is all you need to really survive, and that's what we're providing, we can't do everything. So I don't really know how to solve that problem for you. Yeah, I'm not sure I carried my message the way I wanted to, but you know what, it's been 50 minutes. I'm tired of trying to explain it and trying to like make it more clear. So I think this is the end. And I'm really sorry about the cold. I hope you have a great day, and I think this counts as a vlog for yesterday and today. So like, yeah, I think we got it covered. All right, bye.